move forward. Okay, so today is July 4th, and we are ready to have this workshop about useful activities for sensory motor development and integration. So, first of all, a very beneficial thing and a very important thing in the beginning is that we can mention that the brain's food, what the brain can get nurtured or nourished with is what? Sensory stimuli. Yeah, in fact, as if we cannot live without food, oxygen, water, sleep, the brain itself needs to continue living properly and function properly with the sensory stimuli, receiving sensory input from the environment, leave the brain activated enough and help the brain function properly. In many of the experiments that nowadays are considered unethical and no one is allowed to do, but before many years ago, there were lots of experiments that used to be unethical, but people used to do it. In terms of scientific experiments, there are some experiments before that if you put a person in a barrel full of liquid oil in the dark and without any sound. So just imagine a naked person in a barrel of oil in the dark without any sound. If you put that person in this situation, after less than 8 hours, that person would experience some signs of hallucination. Hallucination means that the brain starts making some sensory experiences that doesn't exist in fact. So, in fact, the brain needs sensory experiences. Once you give a sensory deprivation to the brain, once you do not provide any sensory stimuli or minimize the sensory input to the brain gradually starts making those sensory experiences to continue living. It's a kind of survival task by our brain. And that's why we are mentioning that the brain's food is sensory stimuli, yeah? And it's a pyramid that I'm seeking your attention. Just pay very brief attention to this part that most of the time the families and clients are coming to the practitioner just to resolve some issue or problem at the top of the pyramid, like daily living skills, behavior, academic skills. With such complaint or problem, they join us in the clinic. But in fact, there are some underlying factors that are contributing to the problem or can contribute to the proper function of those at the top of the pyramid. So sensory at the bottom, at the lowest part of this pyramid, okay? And also sensory motor, which is about interaction between sensory system and motor system, are maintaining and making up a good perceptual motor experience, and consequently, they will lead to some proper cognitive function, and many of our behavior, academic achievement, daily living skills are strictly and inflexibly bonded with cognitive skills. That's why there's a kind of hierarchical, step-by-step achievements are needed for any person, and sensory systems are playing a very important role in achieving this. So I just want to skip them, but once we, in the Q&A time, we can get back to this slide to explain it more in details. But as a kind of just very, very simple, in a very simple language, as if it is being derived from some website that I have mentioned, the reference at the bottom. Okay, there are two types of behavior. One type is kind of the children who are seeking some sensory stimuli, and the other children are the ones who are avoiding or defending, rejecting those sensory stimuli. For example, if a child is easily irritated by the texture of the clothing and cannot tolerate the tag inside the clothing, or if a child cannot happily accept a nail trim, or if a child has some hard time during the haircut time, it's kind of tactile sensory avoidance. Or if a child is very tickly, it's tactile sensory avoidance. But if a child loves to be hugged, wants to roll over on the floor, wants to climb up the slide, wants to jump on the sofa, loves bumping to the floor, bumping to the wall, bumping to others, enjoying smashing the door or squeezing stuff. They are all sensory seeking behavior in proprioception and vestibular. So there are many of the behavior of the children that are having some roots in sensory needs or their sensory profile. So if a child covers the ears upon going to a crowded place, in fact, that child has a very low threshold in auditory system. It means that that auditory system is sensory avoiding. And the behavior of that child is sensory avoidance. Yeah. But if a child enjoys loud music and loves making noise himself, most probably that child is sensory seeking in that auditory system. So there are some examples about. So what is considered normal is very important. What is considered normal? Normal population define what normal behavior is. So if in a kind of among a group of children in daycare, a certain level of noise or background noise is generally accepted by the majority of children in the daycare, so the certain level of that background noise is considered normal in daycare. So if a child is suffering from that background noise in the daycare, that child is presenting some abnormal behavior to the thing that is generally accepted by the other children in the daycare. So there is no rigid definition about what normal thing is, but once the majority of the population can tolerate some sensory stimuli and other child cannot tolerate it, that could be considered avoidance. Or if a majority of people do love a certain degree of some sensory stimuli, but another child exists in that situation that loves more and more and more of that sensory stimuli. So he feels it, so he enjoys it, then that person is seeking sensory seeking behavior. So if in a playground, typically children engage with sliding activity 5, 6, 10 times in an hour, going up the slide and coming down, and then they feel that, okay, it's enough. I enjoyed and to the fullest, and it's enough of me. But if a child is sensory seeking in vestibular system, maybe that child keeps going sliding for more than 50 times, as if 10 times more than the normal population. So it's a kind of sensory seeking behavior. Yeah, it's called so. But per se, it's not an important thing. The maladaptation that takes place after not being fit in a sensory environment is the problem. And we can later on talk about that, but not in this workshop. So we can talk about 15 activities that are promoting sensory motor development and I have decided to utilize all of them in a way that they are doable at home, generally regarded as safe, which is called GRAS, so generally regarded as safe, yeah? And they are the things that you can do at home. It's not needed any specific experience or expertise, and you can do it and you can practice it, and based on the feedback you can take from your child, you can modify it and modulate it and regulate it so that you can have a good repertoire of sensory activities for your own child. Okay, so they are just kind of recommendations. Okay, but I start with dancing with music. That normally dancing with music per se is a very good thing for thinking the auditory system and motor proprioceptive, so proprioception and also vestibular and also um, uh, auditory system are integrating to each other once dancing, but kind of some variations about the task. One of them could be dancing fast and slow. That, for example, if you can record a sound that, if you can change the speed of the sound, in, for example, YouTube, you can change the speed of the sound, then you can make it fast, and then you should do it in the dance, make it a fast dance, and then all of a sudden you make it extremely slow, and they should practice it in a slow way, and it gives a good vibe to the children to harmonize and sync the movement based on the rhythm and the pace of what they are hearing. The other version could be that you can dance, but there are some certain rules about the limb movement. For example, you can dance whatever, however you want. However, what I expect you is that do not raise your right arm. You can dance in a very weird way that your left or right arm doesn't move or doesn't go higher than your, for example, nose area. So if you're dancing, this hand can go, but this hand cannot go more than this, okay? Some certain rules that you can give in a dance, and then you can see if that person is fully aware about the position and the degree of movement of each limb, okay? And the other activity could be a stop-start that many of us know, like kind of musical chair or stop-start that we keep dancing and you can freeze. And then once the music paused, we should freeze and then wait till the music started in, and then we can do it, okay? So inside many of these activities, even though they are called sensory motor, but they are activating some part of executive function, inhibition system, motor control, cognition. So there are lots of benefits behind each one of them. So digging the ground is the other activity that nowadays that we are in summer, we can take your children, you can take your children to kind of playground and then give a kind of little shovel and then ask them to just dig and delve, explore the ground. To, for example, let's practice treasure hunt. Just imagine that beforehand you have hidden some dinosaurs, plastic dinosaurs, underneath the soil in different part of the a certain kind of a square. You can a designated area can 2 meter by 2 meter, and then you can hide some dinosaur or plastic toys underneath the ground, and then you can let your child. Okay, you are given 15 minutes to find as many dinosaurs. Okay, you also can take a picture of the dinosaur beforehand and make a list of them on the visual list, and then whatever dinosaur that they hunt or take out from underneath the ground, they can check, okay, that dinosaur is survived, check. Okay, and imagine it's a kind of mission that they are going to do, but being busy with the soil and kind of mud, and then feeling and touching it, and also extra pressure to use the shovel to take the soil out. They are very, very enriching sensory motor activities. Or the other thing could be building up a structure that we can put them into a bucket and then press it into the bucket and then make it upside down to gradually make a kind of castle by them. Okay, As far as I remember, the majority of my childhood was spent on making screw kebab with mud. I kept making screw kebab with mud, lots of mixture of water and soil, making the mud, and then found a kind of wooden stick, and then making kebab, and then I was about to serve it to all my family members, and they said, "Okay, Pastor, you did it yesterday too. You did it 2 days ago too." To no stop doing that, but I love doing so and I enjoyed doing so. And there was a kind of muddy time and that I never forget. So better to give you a shot to play some messy tasks because inside those messy tasks, many of other hidden benefits exist. The other thing that for the people or parents who love kind of some educational purposes behind every sensory motor activity, as if they can make kind of tracing alphabets or shapes on the ground by shovel or some carving tools. Or you can even imagine that as if your child has a kind of mindset of engineering in the future. You can ask the child to make a river connection, a kind of river canal that the child can make by digging and delving and making kind of river, and then ask your child to pour water from one end to see how the water moves forward. And there are the things that you can do at home, and then based on your child's age or functional level, you can try them. For tactile experiments, the other thing like kind of it's a very important technique. No, it's a very important skill, or tactile skill, which is called stereognosis. Stereognosis, which is the ability to recognizing the items by touching without watching. So, understanding the identity of objects by touching without watching. Yeah, it has a rhyme as well. So that your child learn to detect what is inside a big bucket of sand without looking at the toy, which is hidden underneath the sand. That child should detect the identity of that thing. So there is a kind of activity like kind of inside the nerd's head that you can search it and you can buy it. There is a kind of a head, a toy about the head of a character which is called, who is called Nerd. Nerd head has two big ears, two holes, and inside that there are lots of plastic material like comb, tongue, worm, spider, and plastic jelly, gummy. And then the child is supposed to put the hand inside the brain of Nerd without looking at it, and he's supposed to take out the exact item that you are asking him. So detecting the stuff by sensory system or tactile system. And the other thing that could be good is if you have two identical toys, then you can give one toy to the child, and then the child is supposed to touch and detect it and look for the similar thing by the other hand. All of them are behind the curtain, so he should detect one and then find the identical one behind the curtain. Or the other thing would be matching experience with an adjective. Just imagine that you make some adjective like soft, smooth, rough, sharp, hot, cold, wet, dried. They are the adjectives that you can put, and then you can have different material that are kind of hot or cold or sharp or rough, and the child is supposed to touch them, experience them, and sort them and match them with the adjective. It's a kind of cognitive task which is enriching the tactile experiment as well. The other thing is about oral motor exercises that many of the children who are struggling with verbalization or vocalization might find it important or helpful. One of them could be blowing games. So, did you remember that I said the majority of my time would be spent on mud kebab game? the rest of that would be spent on blowing game. So I love blowing the tennis table ball, or playing some table soccer, in which I used to set some soccer net or some goal, and then I used to keep blowing the tennis ball to beat my father or brother by leading the ball through blowing it, then moving it toward the soccer net. And that was the activity that helped me increase my respiratory capacity when I was younger. And there was a kind of very, very strong correlation between respiratory capacity and self-confidence and kind of self-regulation in childhood. So one of the things that most of the time psychotherapists, psychologists are working on is about mindfulness, for example, mindfulness about how to breathe, how to energize yourself, or how to regulate yourself mentally. Breathing exercises for adult people are understandable, but for children, it's a kind of very boring task. But if you play some blowing game with your child, as if kind of there are lots of traces of napkin that the child is supposed to blow them and blow them off the table, or a kind of a hang item from the ceiling that your child can blow it and keep moving a pendulum-like activity, pendulum-like movement to that. Or anything like blowing game can facilitate your child's mindfulness by working on the breathing task. Yeah. The other thing is biting a hang grape. That imagine that there's a kind of you can hang a grape or cherry or something, but I suggest you not to hang any fruit that has a seed inside. Okay, so grape is safer. That you hang it from the ceiling by a rope or some kind of a string, and your child is supposed to, without using hand, just biting and grabbing it by mouth. So it's a very fun task, and many of the children like doing so. And microphone fun, that there are lots of activities with the microphone, like kind of just imagine that it is the microphone, and then the practice is so that when the microphone is far, we have to talk very, very low tone. But once it is getting closer to our mouth, we can talk louder and louder and louder and louder. And then when it's going out, it's lower tone. So it's very important to practice it with your child, to see you keep asking your child different several questions and keep moving back the microphone closer to the mouth or farther, and your child is supposed to remember the rule and make it fun out of it. Okay. Also, you can use a kind of real microphone to encourage your child to hear what he can babble. So for a child with a little low functioning babbling or vocalization, that microphone gives the kind of motivation, extra motivation to the child to make a sound. And then he can make a sound by that, and then he can hear it, and then the kind of facilitation happens. So bean carpet is a very traditional sensory motor activity that I think it is obvious based on the picture. There is no need to explain this further. Walking on a bean carpet or crawling on a bean carpet, or sometimes an activity that like kind of with roll a dice or we pick a lottery card, and based on that dice or lottery card, we need to stand for 5 minutes, for 5 seconds on the dice on the number that is showing on the carpet bin. So just imagine that every area of the carpet bin is designated with some, is matched with some number on the dice. And then once you roll a dice, you decide where to stand on. And it could be a kind of fun game if you make 2 dices, and then the child is supposed to roll them at the same time, and then each foot should represent another dice, a certain dice. And then so the child's 2 feet should be placed on 2 different zones when 2 dice are showing 2 different numbers. And it's a kind of rather hard activity for children that give them different texture, receiving from different food, from both feet, different feeling of experience that are activating the central nervous system. Because a very, very important rule of thumb when working on sensory motor activity is that sensory stimuli per se vanished out in less than 1 minute or 2 minutes of exposure. So if you keep rubbing a hand, after 1 minute or so, the brain gets used to it, and the benefits of that rubbing or that sensory stimuli gets gradually decreasing. But the thing that the children notice, or let's say the children that the brain notice, is the difference before after. So you don't have any specific idea about what cold is until you have been informed. Then you place your hand in the bowl of in the bucket of water and ice. Then you understand, oh, it is called cold. Okay, so the difference would be recognized by brain. Yeah. So the next activity is about science experiments. That is a very, very lovely activity that needs creativity, and that you need to understand about the concepts that are paradox can give you lots of ideas how to work them. For example, wet and dry. Just imagine that you ask your child to spray and make a towel wet. Make a towel wet, and then you give a hair dryer to your child to make the towel dry again. So the child is doing a kind of simple science experiment by making it wet and then drying it back again. Or a lighter shade in a kind of dark room by playing flashlight, or understanding about the size of shadow of any object under the sun to see why it is changing and what is the relationship between the sun and the direction of the sun ray and the size of the toy, or this thing. Or the concept like empty and full, like kind of just imagine you give a big bowl of water to a child and give a little stick-on or little kind of what we say, little glass of cup, and then you ask your child to empty the big bowl by that little glass or little cup, gradually empty it to another bowl, that the child understand about the size, the volume, and how that activity give a kind of sensory exposure of the water to the hand of the child. So there are the things that are called science experiments, yeah? The other rule of thumb, which is very important, is that once your child's brain is learning something, and in the meantime that the child's brain is engaged through learning process, the child's brain is more open to receive sensory input. Yes, so if you are working with a child who is fully resistant against whatever you do, if you are facing a child who is very anxious and keep rejecting everything, any suggestion, doesn't accept any suggestion, never flexible, that child cannot benefit from sensory input that much. But if a child is willing to learn, is willing to experiment or try or learn the thing, or check what happens if I make a mess? How can I make a mess with this? What happens if I fix and mix and match? Okay, these science experiments in first hand add up the openness of the brain to get sensory stimuli, and then we enrich those science-based experiments with some sensory enrichment as well, yeah? The other thing is about animal work, and animal work, as it comes from the name, is that the child is supposed to copy the movements of animals. Just imagine that you are working like a snake. Does a snake have a foot? Goodness, no, the snake doesn't have a foot. So how can you walk like a snake? And it seems that the snake's creeping and crawling. Can you creep and crawl? Can you walk like a bear? The bear doesn't put the knee on the floor. The bear walks with the sole feet on the floor and palm of the hand. No knees on the floor. So it's called bear walk. So crab walks from side to side, not forward or backward. Crab walks in a sideways. So a panda might roll over when walking. An elephant now walk heavily and steps heavily, or immediately after elephant, if you ask your child to walk like an ant, the child should walk very gently. Yeah, so there are many emotions behind the movement. Just keep it in mind that there is a very, very important relationship between what we say movement and what we say motion and what we say emotion. Okay, there are three terms that are having different meaning, but they are bounded and correlated to each other. So movement is such kind of moving object that you can see with your eyes. When I move my hand up, it's the movement. But motion is the movement of some neural message, neural message from one synapse in my brain to another side, as a kind of neural message coming along or moving along with a neural pathway. They are called motion. Those motion in the brain sometimes make significant or obvious or visible movement. Many of the motions in the brain doesn't make any change in the movement, but some of them make some add to some movement. Yeah, a kind of a border thing between movement and motion is the movement of the eyes. So the ocular movement or movement of the eyes, the kind of between movement and motion, because yeah, it's because of the very complex definition of how our central nervous system works. But movement, motion, and emotion. So once you give a meaning to motion and movement and bond them to each other, you will have a better understanding about feeling that motion, feeling that movement, that what I am doing. Okay, so what I am doing means that you are giving some meaning to what you do. So just imagine that a child, a very, very newborn baby keeps moving the hand and arm, but is not fully aware about what she or he is doing, just kind of movement reflexes that keep doing that. And gradually, once he really understands his own body, gradually moves the hand to touch some kind of vocalizing toy to make it again, make a sound out of it again. Yeah. So gradually, purposeful movement happens. But at the end of the day, once the child understands that every time that I move my hand, there is a meaning underneath that I can make a change in the environment. So gradually, those movements come into motion and it will come into making kind of emotion in the environment. So it's a very broad term, and I would, if you are having enough time in later workshop, I can explain it in detail. But animal walks, another variation of animal walk is move a feeling. Just imagine that walk like an angry elephant. Now walk like a sad elephant. Now walk like a very happy crocodile. Now walk like a very jealous cat. So it's not important what a different the child can remake and reproducing those different movements based on the feeling that your child tries to have a kind of abstract thinking about the feeling and put himself in the shoes of an angry elephant and move like an angry elephant is a kind of a very good experience of mixing emotion with motion with movement. Yeah. The other thing is about copying from a visual or note. Just imagine that you drag a card, and in the card it is mentioned 2 hands up, 1 foot up. Then another card is written, 1 hand, right hand on your head, left hand on your chest, and 1 foot to the wall. Okay, you read them and you're supposed to do the exact thing based on the note. Okay, or if a child cannot read, you can have a picture of those positions that the child is supposed to copy and make it. Yeah. The other thing is about home calls that just I want to tell you that if you have planned to give a home course to a child so that you make them more familiar with the responsibilities at home, or if you seriously are thinking that if your child learns to do the course at home, you will have more free time, okay, do not do this activity. This activity is going to take much more time from you upon training your child how to do this code, and the quality or the end quality of those assignments are too low to be considered as a kind of task that your child has been able to do it independently. So there are just some situations that in which you are going to give some opportunities to a child to learn it, to learn how to struggle with the environment. Just imagine the kind of cleaning the window that a child with a sponge is supposed to keep cleaning the window, and imagine that how your child understand about the dust or debris existing in the window, on the window. Most of the time, children do not have any idea about dirt or uncleanliness. So it's better to draw some, put a kind of visible mark with a kind of whiteboard marker to different part of the window, and then ask your child to wipe it or clean it then, so that no red or yellow or black mark on the mirror leaves. So there are other things like kind of brushing up the sink by a kind of brush that you can ask your child to keep brushing up a thing to make it kind of more shinier. Yeah. Or the other thing is squeezing a sponge, that the sponge is full of wet and full of water, and you try to learn to how to squeeze it with both hands to make all water out of it. Okay. There are some sensory motor activities during the home course. There are some examples. Do you notice that whenever you do the home course, you get tired because your muscles and your body is moving and functioning and you are consuming lots of energy? Those are called sensory system operation. Those are called proprioception, tactile system that you are doing and working. So just imagine that many of the people who are suffering from depression, the sign of the depression is that they have tendency to sleep in bed, not to move at all, and then by doing so, they are depriving themselves from sensory stimuli. Then this deprivation of sensory system exacerbates the depression symptoms. So it's a kind of vicious cycle, yeah? So if you do the job, you get sad that I am alone and no one is helping me in the home call. But if you don't do them, your mental health will be in danger more and more. So it's a thing that just have a kind of take a look at the half full of the glass, that doing the home course is good for the brain function as well. And you can ask your child to have a kind of companionship with you while doing this. So tunnel creeping, and that is good for posture strength and body awareness. That is just kind of stacking some chairs, and the child is supposed to creep underneath these chairs, pedal, so that the child is can move the line, and then tunnel loop with music that if your child can hear something in the meantime of creeping, the kind of a different experience, or even a kind of thing like kind of rope escape that you fasten the rope everywhere from every furniture object, and the child is supposed to move in between the ropes without touching the rope. Or if you gently fasten some blanket around your child and you ask your child to get out of the blanket. Okay, the other thing that your child should use his body limb to get out of the blanket fastened around him, or kind of escaping from situations like, yeah. The other thing is about phone call game is number 10. It's a very, very lovely activity that children learn how to use the phone and how to respond to the phone. For example, the child picks up the phone and the person on the other end would ask the child, okay, now that you picked up the phone, go and water the flower at the top at the second floor. Then the child is supposed to, in the meantime that is holding the phone in hand without hanging it up, the child is supposed to pour the water and then go up and give water to that flower or plant. Okay, it's following instruction to the phone. Okay, or if the child hangs up the phone, he is supposed to memorize and remember the order and can do it once he's hanging up the phone. Or if a person at the end of a phone asks the child to send a message to mom, for example, hi, I'm dad, I'm asking you to leave a message for your mom. I'm gonna come at 6 p.m. tonight, and two of my friends are with me. My mom, my dad is gonna come at 2 a.m. tonight, along with 6 of his friends. So it's a thing that's very different from the reality. 6 p.m. with 2 friends versus 2 a.m. with 6 friends. But that the child become able how to pass the message as accurately as possible is another mission. How they are related to sensory system is that these activities are seeking kind of cognitive function from the child. And in the meantime, the father or mother at the end of the phone can ask the child to do some activity that is enriched sensorily. Just imagine kind of, I'm asking you to go and jump on the bed mattress 5 times, then go down and crawl or creep underneath the kind of the tunnel, and then thank you, bye. Then turning up, no, hanging up the phone. So we can enrich them with some sensory orders, yeah? Pillow game, pillow fight. I recommend the couples pillow talk, but for children, pillow fight, okay? For making a pillow castle with lots of the pillow castle, making a kind of big, using lots of mattress or blankets or, moving underneath them, hiding behind it, hiding under the pillow or no mattress. Sometimes I remember that as a child, I lived more than once. And do you remember that I said the majority of my life would be spent on mud kebab, and also the rest of them would be spent on blowing game? The other half of my other life would be spent on pillow castle and pillow fight with my cousins. So the other thing that has made lots of memories to me. That's why I'm so energetic now. No one. So it's the thing with the other effects of the pillow game or pillow fight in childhood. So, so flashlight game are the things about. So you take a flashlight in your hand and you give another flashlight to a child, preferably with different color of the flashlight. You can use a kind of transparent, different color transparent at the glass of the flashlight, so that it gives a different color. And then you are asking your child to, this is a kind of, there's a police and there's a this, and then police is going to stick to this or get the robber, and then the child is holding the flashlight of police, and then you are holding the flashlight of the robber man, and then these two are going to run away from each other. The police is going to have a kind of fight or flight, chasing task, and on the wall, on the ceiling, on the floor, these light spot is moving, and the child is supposed to follow it as well. So there are things that can happen, or there are lots of other variations that you can utilize, or sometimes children suggest something more fun. But remember that the thing that children suggest you is fun to themselves, not fun to you. You are just supposed to be a good companion to your child. So if you say, how come? It's not fun at all. It's not joyful at all. It's very boring. But your child is laughing and loves doing that. So keep doing the thing that your child has found some fun in it. Yeah? It's a kind of rule of thumb or fact. So 3 more activities are left. Activities for distant control of environment, which is very, very important. Activities for distant control of environment. Yeah. Water gun, remote car drone, throwing a ball, throwing a dart, throwing or rolling a bowling ball. They are all the things that a child, when standing at one spot, can control further distance. Yes, many of the games are not controlling the distance. For example, if you're playing puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle with a retraction, with a protraction in the shoulder, you are mostly focusing on sitting on the floor or at a table and doing a puzzle like that. So it's very close control of environment, and your environment is minimized toward your eyesight when you are looking down. But distant control of environment give a visual field, we give an expanded visual field, which is called over horizontal visual gaze. Over horizontal visual gaze is a thing that people in rural area have a better over horizontal gaze because there is no sky crasher, there is no apartment, there is no high building. So once they stand in a farm, and once they stand at the top of a mountain, they have a retracted shoulder and higher and upright, more upright angle of the neck, and they are looking this way, as if they are looking the horizon. But in cities, people in urban or crowded mega cities, they are most of the time are having the head down, looking at the phone, and this is having a kind of negative no implications on the posture of the person or the self-esteem of the person or the ability or attitude that I can only control limited stuff in front of me. But if you ask a child who is, for example, if you ask a child who is nonverbal to wet other people by water gun, in fact, if a child who is nonverbal take a water gun and keeps making every person wet, in fact, that child is interacting toward the far distance with other people, and it is called communication. So that child will be more motivated more to use his sound to vocalize and seek attention from distance. Yes, so there is a kind of interaction of the system to each other. Yes, the child is not verbal, so loses self-confidence, so loses distance control of environment. Then you give a distance control of environment, the child gets motivated to become verbal as well. So it's a kind of thing that we can work on further on. So the other thing is about footcraft, that if you ask your child to play some activity like food sandbox, making messy works with food, just imagine to mix kind of raspberries and fruit balls and chips into yogurt and give a spoon to a child to splash and mix them with each other, and then use hand to make a Play-Doh with it and add some flour to that, and then making a flour that is very messy or and disgusting, and then that touch, that texture, that food craft activity is a very, very important thing. Let's have some substitute version of mud kebab for the children of nowadays. Know that it's a kind of more healthy way of mud kebab that I used to do it before. So making a craft, painting the fruit, just kind of squeezing. Any fruit has a color, yeah. Once you ask your child to color a picture of orange with the color of orange, that you can draw an orange on the paper, give a real orange to a child, and ask them to squeeze it with the thumb to make a kind of orange out of that orange to make the picture orange. Yes, so there are some fun activities that your child can learn from. And more importantly, the other benefit of food craft is that if your child is picky eater, or let's say avoidant to or resistant against trying new food intake, that you give some time that your child has some exposure time to being exposed with the food or material, can gradually desensitize the mindset of the child and make him more open, add up to the openness of the brain by testing and smelling new food and objects. So there's called food craft with some benefits about picky eater children as well. And the good news at the not that I can add up to is the kind of advertisement is that we are going to have some group of pediatric feeding in the clinic to recruit the children who are struggling with eating disorder, to make a group of children, because we have realized, Mr. Pulsafar, as a registered OT and I, we have realized that there are lots of hidden benefits in those food craft, in the group activity. It can facilitate some issues or resolve the issues of picky eater during these activities. So, and last thing, the last activity is about a sticky note, that you stick the sticky note to different height of the wall, and the child is supposed to jump and grab them. You can ask your child to take a sticky note from the wall and then read the instructions. Whatever that instruction is saying, the child is supposed to do. Or you can ask your child to keep stamping the sticky note in a fast pace. You can add music to that. Whenever the music is stopped, the child is supposed to stop stamping as well. There are lots of variations that you can add up or remove from the main task. Even as you remember, we have mentioned that I was supposed to talk about 15 sensory motor activity, but I can't help with providing more than 45 activities. Yeah, right? I have provided about 45 activities because each one of them had some kind of 3 or 4 variations. The reason that I did so is that behind every activity, there are lots of practice or experience that exist. You need to get involved and engage with those activities and practice its effectiveness on your child, and get some feedback from your child when partnering in those activities. Then, in later workshop that I can have in future, I will provide you with more than 25 or more of the strategies for motivating your child to do these sensory motor activities. Many of the families might say that, yes, okay, these sensory activities are a great idea and we could Google it as well, but you explain it good, fairly well, but still I cannot do it with my child at home because my child is not cooperative with me. Okay, and you have lost your self-confidence as a parent to get engaged or involved, you have been rejected by your child, and you have lost your self-confidence as a parent to give it another try. So you might need more involvement, push yourself to involve from different part of activity. Also, there are plenty of strategies and techniques that I can teach you in another workshop that might take more than 1 hour. So maybe it could be a 2 series workshop that I can teach the therapists and professionals and the parents about how to motivate the children to do the task. So, any question? It's done.